Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about why red kind of sucks. Well, I mean, it's true, it kind of does suck a little bit. Uh, but it's a little bit clickbaity, but that's okay. Cause that's I don't do it too much, just do a little bit. Uh, Basically, just I was thinking about I don't know, for last couple of years, like sort of why exactly red decks tend to be the same sort of like little dudes and burn spells, just the same thing, like ad nauseum, over and over again. And I've come with a couple of things, but let's get right into it. Basically, the biggest one is like the mechanics themselves. There's some low ceilings on some of these mechanics, including the ones that are mostly exclusive to red. So the mechanics that you think of specifically when you're playing red, like burn spells or whatever, those ones are basically the biggest offenders. So the ones that are like uniquely red. So it's like, oh well, why do you play red? So you can play lightning bolt or whatever, and stuff like that. A lot of those mechanics are either have been nerfed now, or changing color pie design philosophies, or whatever, depending on how they want to shape, standard forms in the future. Red's been a pretty big loser in that respect, unfortunately. So there you have it. Uh, some of the mechanics are just unplayable and bad. Any of the coin flipping stuff, any of the chaos stuff, I mean, it's all pretty much bad. And this is mostly just in a constructed, and maybe somewhat unlimited too, but mostly just constructed. So standard, modern, legacy, vintage, stuff like that. I mean, obviously a lot of this stuff is good in EDH, but that's a kind of a low bar, so it's not exactly. And EDH is more about fun, obviously, versus like I'm building the best singleton deck to beat other people or whatever. I mean, I guess that's fine if you have a play group, uh, people want to be competitive or whatever, but not really my cup of tea. Anyways, and the third thing is the color of itself very linear, very limited interaction with other zones of play. Even on the board, it's like, oh, we have all these burn spells, but like they're not typically very good against things that are big. So big creatures, what are you gonna do? You try and bolt the goy for something. There's not much you can do there. So that's a big problem. Again, sort of funneling um, the decks into a certain kind of archetype. So let's look at some of the mechanics that red is basically has access to. And this isn't going to be things like cycling and things like that, but that's a little bit different. Those can be pushed or as much as they want or whatever, how much they want to in any given set, and depending on the standard environment and if it's even in standard or whatever, you know. So let's look at this. So the first one we got, the one that you really think of when red, or at least usually when I do, is land destruction. And it is basically bad now. It is not very good. It's not very good at all. Uh, I mean, it's basically 4 mana now. You don't really have the 3 mana. No more Stone Rain. Been a while since they printed that. It's been a while since they printed a Stone Rain with upside. You got uh, uh, God, yeah, well, I guess Chiroclasm. It's the last one I can think of. That was like in Cold Snap, I think, and that wasn't even like an. That was like you had to. It was more like a color hoser because you had to kill an islander or plains. But still, at 3 mana, ugh, not that's not really particularly good. I mean, there's a little bit of an exception, the sort of Sowing Salt clones or whatever that you board in against Tron or something. Um, but yeah, typically they don't really print good 3 mana land destruction spells, and that's kind of the baseline. Like you'll have 3 mana, there's like LD decks and like pawns or whatever in modern that you can basically play, but those require you to even play like mana ramp to really make them good, because you can't exactly just be like Stone Rain you or whatnot on third turn. That's not very exciting. So yeah, it's basically been nerfed, and even at 3 mana, it's like leaves a lot to be desired. Burn, obviously, we mentioned that. Burn's pretty much shock and lightning strike and bolt and all these other things will pretty much always be good, always be playable and standard, obviously, depending on the format. How they, what's the, what kind of creatures need to kill. Uh, what other good burn spells or whatever. But typically you can't really Burn's basically been maxed out since Alpha. Lightning Bolt is basically the gold standard. It's probably impossible to print anything better than Bolt without making something like like Fire Blast, which gives you a better rate than Bolt, but it's basically just a finisher. So it's probably impossible to print a better burn spell than Bolt than just power creeping at like 1 mana 4 damage or something. So that's it is what it is. So like so basically your burn decks, like this is as good as your burn repertoire is gonna get. Your Bolt clones, your Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts. While every other deck doesn't really have that problem. Like they'll keep pushing creatures, and red doesn't unfortunately always get the best creatures either. They've been definitely getting the short end of the stick there. Next one is haste. Haste is this one's actually a good one. So like a lot of these mechanics are bad or just not very good or whatever. But haste is probably one of the better mechanics that red has access to. It's not only is it very flavorful, it screws up combat math, so it's hard to play around, and it's good against sweepers. Obviously, most sorcery speed sweepers. Just think about like how powerful a Goblin War Chief is in like the classic Vile Goblin decks or whatever. It even plays like Ringleader, which has well, obviously they're not playing it for the haste, but the haste on the Ringleader is actually very good because just jamming a Ringleader on an empty board after your board gets wiped and still getting 2 damage in. I mean that's so powerful. Like it's just and there it's like it's even redundant, but it's still like very very good. So yeah, and of course some of the better openings for goblins, like its third turn kills, are more or less enabled by War Chief or Lackey of the War Chief and pile drivers or whatever. So haste is very good, a lot of good stuff. So this one's actually they do end up putting this on better cards, like Goblin Guide, or something like Hazret or stuff like that. So haste is actually a very good one. So that's a little bit of good news. They always keep printing new good haste stuff, and there's like a big ceiling. They don't have to worry about like if you put haste on any random dork, it's not always it's not gonna break anything most of the time, especially if it's like a 4 or 5 mana spell. So that haste is good. Haste is good. Fortunately, hopefully they'll keep making ones. Temporary creature stealing, like all the threaten effects, they're basically all bad. There's actually not as many as I thought that were printed. They're just really not particularly good. I mean, pretty good and limited. Like I've had a lot of situations where I'll draft a threaten and be happy with it, but at least in constructed, no thanks. The copying stuff again is like anything like fork-esque, like fork or whatever, copying spells, not particularly good. But the stuff like Kiki Jiki or Splinter Twin, specifically in like the Splinter Twin decks, or even just Kiki Jiki by itself, it used to do good stuff in the old Tooth and Nail decks. You tutor up like some, I don't know. Well, I think there was a combo with it. I can't remember, but I remember Kiki Jiki being a part of that. So it can be bad, it can be good. It's a lot of times if you have to hold the mana up to copy the stuff, it's always bad because it just sort of plays not the way that most of the red decks want to play. Want to be aggressive and play their spells, not like hold stuff open for things that your opponent might not do. Next we got the temporary ramp, so like the rituals and stuff. They did push them pretty hard. You got Rite of Flame and Seething Song and stuff, and those are very powerful. But then those are a little too good, a little too powerful. So those things were banned in modern, and so it's very very unlikely they'll ever print anything even remotely as good as that, because like it's one of those things where you get a critical mass and it can cause a lot of problems, obviously, even with kind of like the lackluster ones you have available like in modern. And there's almost no way they could ever print like a red version of Dark Ritual, like a color shifted. That would just be insane. Even like in the supplementary set seems extremely unlikely. But I guess we can talk about the certain red cards. Exile top card of your library, then you can cast it for free or whatever, or cast this card this turn or whatever. Those again kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes there's the good ones that'll you can play it and you don't have to pay the mana for it, or the one like the Chandra Torch of Defiance, her version of that's pretty good because if you can't play it or whatever, you can still shock them. So sometimes those are good, sometimes they're just like bad. Those aren't, so again, kind of a mixed bag. There's some some room for improvement on the cast without paying mana cost stuff for it, or cast from exile this turn. It's an interesting one at least, but for the most part they're kind of meh. Then we have Menace and the can't block stuff. Like on the was it Kenra Earthshaker? I think that one has the one that makes them unable to block. And I mean, just look at how powerful the Ramanop Red deck was with all the can't block stuff. Like that's actually a pretty good, because that's a good way to deal with like big stupid fat things on the battlefield. They don't really tend to print too many of these effects that are good, because a lot of times it's like they're on spells and it's really like lackluster. Menace is really good. They haven't really printed any really good Menace guys. But Menace, again, another one that lets you push through damage with your small dorks, because I mean, typically, like, that's about all the good ones you have. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of there's Glorybringer and stuff like that they'll print occasionally, which is good. But though that's mostly just typically a standard thing. But these are pretty good. These are, if they print good cards with Menace, I mean, hey, that'd be awesome. That'll certainly help. And then we got this artifact interaction stuff. These are mostly just sideboard cards. It's like shatter effects that just kill artifacts, but they do obviously notably Goblin Welder, switching them in and out of play through or trash for treasure or whatever. But Welder is the best one. Very good in Vintage. Other places it hasn't been that great. It was good in PT New Orleans and Extended when Mirrodin just came out, and you had all these broken artifacts and stuff to weld in and out of play, and then Tinker to get them in the graveyard. Yeah, those are pretty good. But mostly this is just sideboard stuff. It's just, that's okay. That's okay. That's something, I guess. The random effects, they're all unplayable and they're all bad. The next one, we got the sort of putting it all together, like the Punisher effects. So stuff like Browbeat, which is not very good, but also Eidolon, which is a Punisher effect, but also, one of the hate bears. Obviously, Eidolon is pretty good. Hosing stuff, so like, Boil or Blood Moon, stuff like that. And these all kind of have basically the same thing, go into the same sort of category, sort of put them all together. They're sometimes good, sometimes bad. I mean, obviously Browbeat and stuff like that, or was it Molten Influence, the counter spell, or they take for, like makes them just choose the one that's less bad for them. That's those are basically unplayable pretty much every time. So again, this is the one place where they really push. I mean, look how many hate bearers they print for Death and Taxes. Like literally one every set. It doesn't even have to be a standard set. They'll print them in all of their, Conspiracy and Commander, and holy moly, like they just print a million of them. All right, so you got the boosting effects, Double Strike. There are no good Double Strike cards, with the exception of Temur Battle Rage, used in Grixis Death Shadow. And boosting effects, all the boosting front side stuff. And none of these are typically good. The fire breathing on dragons, like, none of the stuff is really playable. Unfortunately, there's no good Double Strike cards. No Warren Instigator does not count. That card is not very good. It'd be sweet if they printed good ones, but again, that's hard to really. It's pretty tough to balance. Look at all the ones that they've tried to print in the past. Well, like the 3-mana 1/3 Double Strike guy, was that guy from Theros or something? That whenever it deals damage, you draw a card or something. This, I guess, it was like the pseudo Ophidian guy. That guy wasn't very good. Ugh. This one's not a lot here, unfortunately. Looting's good. Like look at the bad looting cards. Like Goblin Lore, which is garbage forever. It's just bleh. But obviously these are very good in all the graveyard centric decks, all like Dredge or Hollow One. I mean they're Cathartic Reunion. That was the one that was printed that really broke Grave Troll again, or for the first time or whatever in Modern. I believe it was Cathartic Reunion. That one's really good. Obviously Faithless Looting is the best version of this. Very 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 good card. I'm a big fan of Faceless Looting. So these can be pretty powerful. These aren't really what, again, they don't really, some of these effects are like, oh, this is powerful and this is a good mechanic and these are good, but they don't really all mesh together. But individually, you're like, yes, this is pretty sweet. Flying is, pretty good, but again, it's mostly limited to dragons, and dragons are mostly unplayable. Again, sometimes you get the the Glorybringer or Thunder Hellkite or whatever, the really super push development cards. Um, but yeah, typically not no good small flyers. I can't even think of one. Trample is even less well distributed, not really a very important ability. I mean, you have it on like the ball lightning type of things, but those haven't been playable, unfortunately, forever. I have some really cool dark ones I'd like to use, but oh well. Damage-based sweepers, these are very good, but they're again just typically sideboard cards. Fiery Confluence, I think, being the most notable exception. The shunt effects, the sort of misdirection stuff, it's basically unplayable. I mean, even those effects in blue aren't very good except for misdirection, and that's basically just so you can misdirect Ancestral Recall to yourself. Although I guess you can play those in Commander, although I typically don't. Prowess, this one's actually very good. Swift Spear, Soulscar Mage, that's the 1-2 guy, and then Bedlam Reveler. These are all very very powerful cards, very good. And these are obviously very good with the looting effects. So that's actually a couple different mechanics that actually did end up coming together and make some good stuff. So I'm a big fan. I like those cards. Those are good. Bedlam Revel obviously is the also does looting and stuff too. So that's really good. That's good. We need more Bedlam Revelers. Those guys are sweet. So that's most of the mechanics, or at least the really important ones that I could think of. Um, so basically, most of the good ones, haste, obviously all the burn stuff like that, um, and then the oh gosh, yeah, even some of the looting stuff, although that forces it into like a different sort of graveyard centric deck. But the prowess and stuff too, being a big one. So like Swift Spear is really good in all the burn decks. Pretty much they all play them. Um, all the damage based stuff, like Grim Lavamancer, I guess. Although he's almost more like a utility thing in a way because he's repeatable burn. But it all basically all the good mechanics just more or less force you into one thing. There are in older formats you get some cards that boost up like combo decks, but those are more like multicolored decks. But yeah, the stuff like the flashback stuff like oh gosh, wow, the stupid one from Innistrad. I feel really dumb. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Um, oh, anyways, yeah, that's good. But so typically they're still just all just aggressive decks. You get some stuff, some old older formats get Dragon Stompy style stuff and other cool stuff like that. But typically, not a lot. There's really no real red control decks. There are sometimes this red stuff, but like again, these decks have a limited number of tools really available to them to control the board. Unfortunately, so that makes it very kind of a problem. So you definitely have more of the all-in red style decks like the Tomb Stompy things, or just the regular burn-ish style decks, which are all it's kind of they all suffer from sort of the same problem. Well, not the same problem, but they're all very very much so like if you kill some of them and slow them down and throw a big old dork in their way, they're gonna be pretty upset. Yeah, unfortunately, again, with the creatures getting as good as they are everywhere else, red very rarely gets new creatures again. Like this is sort of tied into the problem with the burn spells. Like you just can't. You have a critical mass of all these good damage sources, whether it's efficient creatures like Goblin Guide, and all the burn spells and stuff. Like you can't push them too much, otherwise these decks just get too good, too good. Obviously they're these goldfish people just by throwing bolts at them, which is not very fun. Um, so yeah, maybe if they got more hate bears, that'd be more interesting, I think. Because like those are more interactive. The combo decks can't really go off with them in play. Obviously, look at Eidolon, it's the best one. It's a walking Pyrostagid pillar that'll wax them for 2. And I think that would be the best way. You could probably make a more mid-range deck. Maybe some sort of red version of Death and Taxes. Uh, if you got like maybe like one more like the old red deck win decks that were more controlling-ish that played like pretty sure those ones played Port and Curse Scroll and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like they don't really have good control tools, so not really good in control decks. I mean, all the control decks just play as like red for blasts or Lavamancer in the sideboard or Bolt. I mean, obviously Bolt's the big one. You can snap Bolt, snap or Bolt, snap Bolt. bolt, snap bolt, yeah. So that's kind of the problem. It seems, at least in my, from what I've been thinking, is that it's just you can't. It's just forced into a box, and a lot of these mechanics just don't really work very well, and they aren't on cards that are good. So, but that's okay. It's just something I've been thinking about, and so it helps a little bit to sort of get it out into sort of a video form, to sort of get it all, try and make sense of it. I mean, I'll probably think more about this, but yeah, definitely just bouncing around in my brain. I was like, I gotta get this out. This is kind of interesting, but yeah, red's definitely the color that suffered the most. They keep nerfing all their stuff, keep nerfing all the mechanics, got stuff that they can't really push. I mean, how do you make a better bolt, man? How do you make a better goblin guide, for Christ's sake? Its drawback is even half the time it's like you get extra information. Like you're like, oh, they revealed a force or whatever, or oh, they revealed a daze or a pierce. It's like, okay, I have to play around pierce or daze or. So how do you play around a 1-mana 2/2 that like you periodically see the top of your opponent's deck? Like how do you make a more efficient card than that? Outside of something like Goblin Lackey, where it's like the complete other end of the spectrum that produces like, 10 mana worth of free stuff. So I mean, it's kind of tough. So it seems like probably the Hate Bear route seems like the best, although they have to make good ones first, and not like the really weak ones. So yeah, hopefully they'll keep printing more good stuff, more stuff like Hazoret. Hazoret was sweet. I'd like to see some more mid-rangey red stuff. A lot of those decks aren't typically good, but the Mardu stuff is pretty good in modern. So doesn't hurt that the stuff like Thoughtseize is a lot better in that format. So you can use that to deal with pretty much all the stuff that comes up. So that's basically it. That's just wanted to get this out, and it's pretty great. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and I'll try and have another video out. I got another one lined up. Probably gonna be like a sort of EDH deck tech thing of a deck I've been playing for a while. This is pretty sweet, at least a couple months. So anyways, thanks guys, and have a good day.